All right, we'll call it to order. And join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Roll call.
We have everybody here except Chaston Parks, so there is a quorum. Tonight, though, we have an oath of office for Wyeth Urban for reappointment. Stand back, raise your right hand. I, Wyeth Urban. Repeat after me. I, Wyeth Urban.
I, Wyeth Urban,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess all of the qualifications
that I possess all of the qualifications
required by the City of Kearney
required by the City of Kearney
in the State of Missouri,
in the State of Missouri,
as prescribed by law,
as prescribed by law,
for the position of Planning and Zoning Commissioner,
for the position of Planning and Zoning Commissioner,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Missouri,
and of the State of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws of this state affecting cities of the fourth class,
the provisions of all laws of the state affecting cities of the fourth class,
and the ordinances of the City of Kearney, Missouri,
and the ordinances of the City of Kearney, Missouri,
and faithfully demean myself
and faithfully demean myself
in the position of Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
in the position of Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations. All right, next item is consent agenda approval of the minutes from the 8 April 24 meeting. Are there any issues with what was printed? You got them signed, right? Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes carry. Okay, now we're up to new business. Item A, Westwood North Platte Preliminary Plat Amendment. David.
Yeah, I'd
staff
like to
report.
put on the screen a map
Okay.
for you guys. All right, this is the layout. We got a new mouse today, so I'm gonna move a little bit slow when I adjust it. Okay, so Westwood North Preliminary Plat is item A in the new business section. Parkway Holdings, represented by Ron Cager with AGC Engineers and Robert De La Fuente with Star Development, proposed a Westwood North Preliminary Plat. Plat proposes 345 single-family lots on 155 acres located south of 162nd Street, the west side of Nation Road, and north of the existing Westwood subdivision. Proposed preliminary plat's an amendment to the existing Westwood subdivision preliminary plat that was approved in 2001. There have been 6 or 7 phases of Westwood that were approved. You can see the north end of that on the map that's in their preliminary plat. We're excited about this project and have been working with them on and off the past 2 years, though they made an official submittal in March of this year. The most recent phases of Westwood were platted in 2016. So we've got this new proposed development. We haven't seen any development in this neighborhood in the last 8 years. So we're excited that something's going to happen on this property. Staff recognized the plan doesn't comply with our subdivision requirements. So we've been working with them to try and bring the plan into compliance before bringing it to you today. We notified them of those deficiencies and they asked to move forward. So we placed it on tonight's agenda for you. Plat doesn't include all of the required items and does not meet the minimum design standards that are spelled out in the subdivision regulations. The code requires the plat to identify total acreage and size of each lot, be included in the preliminary plat application. It's called lot data tables, what it's referred to in the requirements. This information wasn't included on their drawing. Minimum design standards in the code require lots to back up to Nation Road and northeast 162nd to include a 50-foot landscape buffer in addition to the minimum lot depth. This requirement is consistent with buffers dedicated as part of the previously recorded final plats in Westwood, with buffer strips approved as part of that original 2001 preliminary plat, and also Cottonwood Creek subdivision to the south. I'm sorry, that comes up later. Also, expectations of the neighbors that their subdivision continue to submit those buffers as part of each final plat. Minimum design standards require pedestrian ways of no less than 10 feet across and near the center of blocks that exceed 900 feet in length. Class deficient 3 pedestrian ways within blocks that exceed 900 feet. Those are located, if you can see on the screen, this block to the south just north of existing Westwood, the block to the north of that, and then the long north and south block that's along the west of the property. The proposed plat is deficient by one residential collector street section along Eldridge Drive, which is the street section that runs along the in front of the subdivision pool. That street section was then identified by their traffic report as having an ADT of over 1,000 trips. And that's when a collector street design needs to be included, 60-foot right-of-way and a little bit wider pavement than a normal residential street. Minimum design standards require cul-de-sac streets not to exceed 500 feet in length without approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We asked for justification from them for a couple of blocks that do exceed 500 feet. We've not received that. Those streets are Stella Circle, Nova Circle, and these two cul-de-sacs to the south. I can't remember the name, and I can't read that. It's a little bit of fine print. If the commission were to approve cul-de-sacs that exceed 500 feet in length, staff would recommend the plan be amended to connect Stella Circle and Nova Circle. So these two cul-de-sacs at the north end, the benefits of that would be reducing the number of lengthy cul-de-sacs by one, so there'd only be 3. In doing that, the length of Nova Circle would actually reduce a little bit, and making that connection provides a second way in and out for people that live on that on Nova Circle, and another way in and out for residents at the north end of the subdivision in case something were to happen at Westwood Drive up at the connection with 162nd Street. The preliminary plat proposes a 30-foot wide right-of-way dedication along Nation Road, which does not comply with the comprehensive plan. Though the comprehensive plan designates Nation Road as a minor arterial, and an 80-foot swath is sufficient, which would mean 40-foot of dedication on their side. Staff recommends a 50-foot wide right-of-way dedication for several reasons. One, the original approved preliminary plat identified a 50-foot wide dedication up along the entirety of Nation Road. Previous phases of Westwood dedicated 50-foot of right-of-way, consistent with that preliminary plat. And then Cottonwood Creek, a subdivision to the south that connects to the south end of Westwood down to Nation Road, also dedicated 50-foot of right-of-way. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission continue this application to the July 8th meeting to allow the applicant time to amend their application to meet the preliminary plat content requirements, minimum design standards, the comprehensive plan, and then the conditions that we included in the staff report. And again, I mentioned Ron Calgar with AGC Engineers is here, and also Robert De La Fuente with the developer there as well.
Okay, thank you, David, appreciate it. Ron, do you want to address any of these issues?
Do you have any comments of staff before I start? I would be happy to go unless you have some questions.
Maybe after you talk a little bit.
I've got some exhibits for you, Ron, so if you just...
So thank you very much. Ron Calgar with AGC Engineers, 405 South Leonard, Liberty, Missouri, 64068, here on behalf of Parkway Holdings. I think it was very interesting to see Mr. Irwin be sworn in tonight, because part of that swearing in was, I will uphold the U.S. Constitution, the Constitution of the United States, of the state of Missouri, and follow the requirements of the city code. What you're going to hear tonight from me is we're not just following city code. We're taking some leeway on, well, they did it that way before, so we'd like to do it that way now. Well, nowhere, I mean, if somebody can produce that and show me that, I will certainly listen. But you can't be picky and choosy on which items you want to cover. So we're going to go through those tonight, and I apologize in advance that it's going to be a little bit arduous, but so first of all, I don't know where it became evident that the application was an amendment to a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat was filed by Laffey Brothers back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. They lost the property, and only a portion of that property was actually preliminary platted. All of it is zoned R1 under your zoning code. But during the recession, the Laffey Brothers lost the property, as I understand it. I don't know all the history details. Parkway Holdings has since come to own the property. They are not amending the plat. An amendment would say that we're operating under the old rules. We can't operate under the old rules because the old rules were Laffey's rules, Laffey Brothers' rules. So this is a new application. So that's, I think, very germane to your decision-making process tonight. Could we get to there's an aerial image on that, but it's so cluttered with the other stuff.
Is that good enough?
So that's the interesting thing that I see there. We don't see the topography or the contours. We do in our office, we see those. But being around farmers like to farm. Farmers don't like to have trees or ditches or ponds. The reason there are trees and ponds is there are a lot of ditches and cut-ups, and that has created very small and segregated fields. So problematic for the farmer, but also problematic for the development world. So that will become evident whenever we go back to the preliminary plat and you start to see cul-de-sacs that ride out on the top of ridges, the high point, and then back up to the ditches. Crossing ditches are problematic. Also, clearing trees is a lot of times looked at as a negative. So we tried to work with the topography of the land by doing those 3 cul-de-sacs that, may I take your brand new mouse?
What did you need to?
I just wanted to, so, oh boy. So here's that cul-de-sac that comes out. This hand's huge, but comes out there. There's also a cul-de-sac here. There's also a cul-de-sac here. And there's another cul-de-sac here. And so that's why the cul-de-sacs are there and not connecting. That's also why they're a little bit longer than your standard. Before we submitted this application, we met with the Fire and Rescue Department, went over that with them. Not only the street grid layout, but also street naming convention, because I feel like that's very important in their world to, we had proposed some street names. They said that would create some problems for them. We renamed the streets, but they didn't have any problem, whether it's 500 feet or 600 feet, you still go down and you turn around. Now, the one on the north is 900 feet, and there again, due to topography and where the street can connect to 162nd Street, that was just kind of the devil in the details there. As David alluded to, we've been working on this project for quite some time, and you're going to hear me go back and forth quite a bit during this presentation and talk about code versus preference. David and you all, frankly, can only be held to the code. Now, the code allows you some latitude to deviate from that and use some common sense. It doesn't say that staff can use common sense. Common sense isn't talked about in the code. The code is given down to staff from the city council, and for that matter, for this body, so that it can have a framework by which to move forward and evaluate applications. There were several references to the 2001 preliminary plat. I think I've hit most of these, but I'm going to hit them again just real quickly. The original preliminary plat, this is not an amendment. This is a new application. To say it's an amendment on the staff report is erroneous. That's not how it was filed. The application was filed as a preliminary plat application. It was another developer, another landowner. We've been working on this application for more than 90 days. Nowhere in your minimum design standards does it say, or however the last guy did it. The three things that we're going to talk about more in detail are right-of-way of Nation Road, right-of-way of Northeast 162nd Street, and buffer strips. And then I want to do a little bit of an educational soapbox about collector streets. So your code does require, the city code does talk about a lot data table. We have done, over our 25 years, we have done a lot of preliminary plats in Kearney. But there again, we can't say what the guy did last time, right? I don't see that there's any benefit of that, but there again, that is your discretion to make a common sense judgment of, do you want 451? I mean, it would take us literally 2 sheets of paper that size, well, maybe 1 sheet of paper that size. And we're gonna start with lot 1. And what your code says is give the lot dimensions and the lot area. That, number one, I think that is dangerous, because if you miss one item on that list that's gonna be super small font, if you miss one of those for meeting the minimum standard and approve the document, you're effectively approving the document. What I did was a more common sense approach and said, what is the purpose of this lot data table but to make sure that you all are holding the preliminary plat to the zoning requirement. And the zoning requirement under chapter 405 is 75-foot wide lots, 110 foot deep, and 8,250 square feet. On the face of this document that you hopefully will approve tonight, it says we will meet all of that. And if we don't, we're gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to get that. So I don't know what going through a laborious table gets you, but there again, it is in your code. Density that's allowed by 405.305 is 5 dwelling units per acre. On the face of our plat, on the face of our document, it clearly does show in a table that we call development data. It's not lot by lot, but it is phase by phase that says how many acres it is, how many lots there are, and what's the density per acre. The average density per acre in the entire subdivision is 2.27. So 5 is the standard. We're saying 2.27, less than half of the density. But yet we've got to do this data table. So that'll be up to you all. And if that's what you require, then we'll put it on there. So let's talk about buffers. And I think we can all agree, but I think it's worth saying that if code is the metric by which we are judged, then the words of that code, including punctuation down to the comma, matters. And I'm going, Dave, could you put that 410, the buffer strip paragraph up?
Was that on the
It was on there.
attachment that you
It
provided?
was, yes, under subdivision requirements. It's pretty neat. I'd go there. Yeah.
And closer.
Getting close. Just past it. 2B.
Oh, there it is.
All right. So I had to break this apart into sentences, in each sentence into a paragraph, but buffer strips. This includes treatment of railroad right-of-way and limited access highways. Nowhere on the face of this project or in the area of Nation Road and 162nd Street is there a limited access highway nor a railroad. So this includes treatment of railroad right-of-way and limited access highway, period. Wherever the proposed subdivision contains or is adjacent to railroad right-of-way or limited access highway, or where lots back onto a public street. Okay, now we've got something, right? We've got lots that back onto a public street. Comma, the subdivision shall provide the following treatment, colon. In residential districts, this is a residential district, there is nothing else, although the code doesn't say what to do in other circumstances. In residential districts, a buffer strip at least 50 feet in depth, in addition to the normal required lot depth, shall be provided adjacent to the railroad right-of-way or limited access highway, period. We said previously we don't have either one of those. This strip shall be a part of the platted lot and shall have the following restriction lettered on the face of the plat. So folks, I don't know if you read that differently than I do, but by your code, buffer strips are not required on this particular project. Block length. So, interestingly, chapter 410, 0.055, subparagraph J, talks about we want your blocks to be 600, but once they get to be 900, then that becomes problematic. Problematic was a parenthetical on my part. We want them to be 600. Once they get to be 900, you either have to divide them by a street or add a pedestrian walkway. So think about that. If it's 1,000 feet, if it's 1,000 foot in between there, it's got to be 600, but it can't be more than 900. So I can't meet those, right? If I had 1,000 and I split it in the center with a road, I'm going to have 500 and 500. Well, that's not what your code says. Your code says we like it to be 600, but it can't be more than 900. So the real reason for that, again, is walking distance and walkability, right? So I took the time to measure the distance with or without so can we go back to the plat, please?
Can I close out of this?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to touch my mouse. So this block right here, Dave is absolutely correct. It is, if you measure it, the code doesn't say where to measure it from, but if you measure it down the center, which feels like to me is kind of the average of the two, it's 1,336 feet. Your standard's 900. Our client doesn't like walkways in between houses or directly behind. Trails are awesome. You give me 200 or 300 foot of greenway behind there, like in Greenfield. That's, some areas of Greenfield get awfully close also, but to have trails behind houses isn't such a big deal. He may argue that, but whenever you're talking about letting people walk in between your house where you're barbecuing, he just doesn't feel like that's, number one, safe, and number two, people don't like that, so those lots don't sell well. So the interesting thing is, if you look at the distance, and what I did was, because the solution is to put a walkway right here in the middle. So if I start over here and I walk myself out and around and over to the intersection of Nation and Eldridge, that distance is 3,084 feet. If that's just walking the sidewalk. If you put the cut through here in and start at this same point right here, cut through, walk down, and then walk over to Eldridge and Nation, it is 2894. There's a difference of distance of 190 feet. Which interestingly is less than the depth of those two lots there. So the 190 feet, the depth of those lots through that area is probably about 280 or closer to 300. But 190 feet, I would like for you to use a little discretionary judgment on that and say, hey, if the guy that's putting up the money, is that a big enough deal to force a developer to do what he doesn't want to do and what he doesn't think he can market well for 190 foot of difference? The other two that Dave mentioned, and those are over the required 900 foot block length, but the difference between how you would walk that is 19 feet on the southern block and 29 feet on the block just north of it. So we're talking about differences of 19, 29, or 190 feet. So we would like for you to use some discretionary power and again, some common sense to say, is that a big enough difference? 190 feet is 19 parking stalls at Costco, which I never park closer than that. Now I know it's 19 parking stalls more. The Stella and Nova connections, which are the northernmost, northeastern cul-de-sac there, the reason we didn't connect that is what we started out with the topography, and it's much fainter on that. But if you really look at that and drill in, you can see that those cul-de-sacs run out the ridges and then the backyards back to the treed, wooded ditch lines. And to make that connection from Stella over to Nova requires us to cross one of those ditches. And that becomes a stormwater challenge for us that we would prefer not to do. And then there again, the fire and rescue folks had evaluated this and felt like that cul-de-sac was able to be navigated for them. So that brings us to the right-of-way. And the right-of-way, the staff report leads you to believe that this is being done because of the comprehensive plan, number one, and then number two, well, it's because they did it last time. That's what they did last time, so that's what is the right solution on this one. The comprehensive plan doesn't even tie back to your city code because it references, and that document looks like this. Obviously, you can't see that, but it has a color-coded chart. So if you're not colorblind, you can find out that that's a minor arterial on 162nd and on Nation. So you go to the city code and you say, well, what's a minor arterial mean? And a minor arterial is not defined in your city code. In fact, what is defined is under section 410.055J6. Can we cut to that one also? Document I sent you.
Which one?
It'll be subdivision, yes.
Subdivision?
Uh-huh. So there's that table. So what you have in the first column is the street type. So let's look for minor arterial. Well, it's not there. So what is there? Highway class 3. I don't know what that means, but it does say 4 lane. So I'm guessing that's an interstate. Anyway, four lanes, that's all. Since there's no definition, we don't know what it is. But the right-of-way, the minimum right-of-way in that instance is 80 foot. So, well, what's the next one? Thoroughfare, major collector. Well, that doesn't jive up with what, but neither does highway. So we're willing to say, hey, let's use the 80. That's the highest number in your code that says what the right-of-way is. But the idea that just because the last guy did it or the guy across the highway did it that way doesn't hold a lot of water. When you can't make a code citation to the law, it's kind of hard for the judge to convict you. I will say, Shelley Daniel, who is your Public Works Director, City Engineer, is working with Olson and Associates, another engineering firm, on trying to develop what some of these streets are supposed to look like and what the street, we call them the street section, what the, from right-of-way to right-of-way, what goes in between there. There's sidewalk, there's curb and gutter, there's a bike lane, there's lanes of traffic and then duplicated on the other side. The section that Olson is at least contemplating, and this is not in your code yet, but it was 80 feet for Nation Road. And that's in between 19th Street and 92. See, a lot of things changed when the 19th Street interchange opened up. And a lot of folks from Kearney and points to the north of Kearney filter down and head south. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, that's not everybody. I mean, some folks work in Cameron, right? But the majority of people probably work in the larger metropolitan area. So they're headed south. So the idea that streets would get bigger in width, more lanes, let's say, as you progress further south to get on the interstate would be a commonsensical approach. They don't start out big and then get smaller as you go toward where everybody's going, right? They've got to get bigger as you go south. So the idea of having, 162nd Street is your corporate boundary. That is your city limit line. So now, there might be plans to annex, but as of today, the date of this application and the date of this meeting, there is no more city of Kearney to the north of 162nd Street. Now, that doesn't mean that traffic doesn't come down those roads. Sure they do. I mean, traffic doesn't understand city limit lines. But we believe because of the code that it should be 80 feet total width. So, just a real quick soapbox on collector streets. And we're okay with doing and I'll tell you why we're okay with that. The stretch of Eldridge from Westwood Drive over to Nation, which is, yes, that stretch there. So David's position on that, I think, is sound. So lots will front onto that street. When lots front onto streets, there's the chance that people will park on the street. If you have visitors or your kid comes home from college, or you have the Bible study, people park on the street. So gaining a little width there, we can get on board with, and we can get behind that. Because I think then there again, that's all about a public safety aspect. But the idea of just to make streets collectors because they meet this magical ADT, which most people in this room couldn't even define what ADT is. It's average daily trips of automobiles, so it's the in and out. It's you and your partner leaving the house, coming back, going to the store whenever you get back. It's all of that average trips that you make in and out of your house. The code that defines whenever you hit 1,000, you've got to have a collector road is over 34 years old. Think about all of the times that I've said in this chamber, let alone the times that I wasn't here, and listened to the Regency Drive folks complaining about speed. The reason they're speed folks is because you build this wide road, and 9 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10, when somebody's not parked there, it looks like an interstate highway. What do? You get into the throttle a little bit more. But that's not what's good for residential subdivisions. That's great for 19th Street where you don't have conflicting driveways and kids playing with balls and bicycles, but it's not what you want in a residential subdivision. The staff report, so I'm going to ask for a very unusual circumstance, and I'm going to ask you to add a condition to your approval tonight. And that condition is that lot 64 of Hills of Westwood's second plat not be developed on or regraded has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with there is very bad drainage there, and that area is right here.
It is this lot, right? Well, if David's hand wasn't like 5 of my lots.
It's right there in the existing, and the Laffey brothers still own that lot.
You go right here.
It has not been developed on, and I think it's not been developed because somebody knows, oh, that's gonna be a problem child. And if you know that area, there's 2 huge curb inlets. Can you do your little guy? Yeah, down there by that line. So you can see that that water, there's over 12 acres of that farm field that drain through there now. And based on the topography, it doesn't look like it drains well at all. And just looking at that, it looks like it maybe even goes back. So I think the city, I mean, I'm not trying to take the lot away from the Laffey brothers. I'm just saying, before somebody gets to build a house on that, somebody needs to go through some pretty detailed analysis of how that water gets conveyed through there. Because somebody's gonna get wet basement. So in David's staff report, there was discussion of, hey, you can approve this, you can deny it, or you can approve it with conditions. I think that's a little bit misleading in that you can also approve it with the conditions that you choose to adopt or add, like the one that I've added. I would like to see back on the buffers, if we could, so let me show you how buffers, I'm sorry, are you on patience or are you?
I'm the attorney.
You're the attorney, okay. Well, I'm not gonna show anything to you. So these are the existing Westwood, Hills of Westwood and Westwood Village, where the 50-foot buffer is on the face of the plat. There again, I think erroneously. And you can see that there's all kinds of stuff built within this 50-foot buffer. So it obviously wasn't too important. Can we pass those around once, if you did? So I would like, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I have made a list of items and why those items are important for you all to consider as conditions of approval. They are Eldridge Drive between Westwood, and I've got copies of this, if I may. Sure. I would like you to consider tonight approval of the preliminary plat of Westwood North, subject to the following conditions. Eldridge Drive between Westwood and Nation, be 60-foot right-of-way with 33-foot back of curb to back of curb. And there's a code reference of why that holds water. Right-of-way dedication of Nation Road provide 40-foot dedication for a total width of 80 feet. There again, for the same reason that we've went through that previously. And on 162nd Street, a 30-foot dedication for a total width of 80 feet. The reason for that is there's already been 50-foot dedicated to the north on 162nd Street. And then the third condition of approval, no buffer strips per code 410.055J2B be required for any proposed residential lots since no lots are adjacent to 1, railroad right-of-way, or 2, limited access highway. And then 4, have the city building codes official restrict grading and/or construction on lot 64 Hills of Westwood second plat until owner can provide engineering support and proof that overland flow of stormwater runoff can be adequately conveyed between existing houses in Hills of Westwood. Happy to answer your questions. Thank you for laboring through that with me.
Very welcome. Okay, well, thank you, Ron, appreciate your time there. What do we got?
I kind of want to respond to some of these things.
Okay, have at it.
So I think, and I'm kind of going to go backwards the way that he presented them, because I think it works best that way. And I'll start with his 64, lot 64. No way you can do it. I'm not really sure why you're even bringing that up, but you all can't on this plat restrict land that he doesn't own and it's in a different plat. Okay, that's just crazy. So just ignore that. But let's look at the right of way. And this is, I think, what the core of the problem with what he's just presented to you here is. He's saying, I don't necessarily disagree with him. ADT may not be the best measure. There are certainly some studies coming out that say some things like that. I understand what he's saying about wide streets, increased speed, although as an engineer, he well knows there are.
Can I have your name? I don't know who this gentleman is that's
Nathan Nicholas.
refuting my testimony.
Nathan Nicholas with a K.
Thank you.
But the problem is, I'm not going to disagree with what his idea is. The problem is it's his idea, okay? And by that I mean, the question is who makes the laws in the city of Kearney? It's not him. It's not me. It's not you guys. It's the city council. So the city council has made some determinations. Maybe they made wrong determinations. That's fine. You guys as a board can make a recommendation up to council. Hey, you ought to look at this ADT thing and see whether it's, really the standard you want. But nevertheless, the council has said that is the standard. And so whether it's a good standard or a bad standard, it's the standard that the people elected by the people of Kearney have chosen, okay? And then that gets us to the basic question that he's presenting to you over and over and over in this, which is ignore the law when it's inconvenient to me and substitute your judgment.
That's unfair, sir.
It is what you're saying. You're saying you don't have to follow the law, they can substitute their own judgment. You can't, okay? Your job is to apply the law to the facts. You don't get to write new law, I'm sorry. You can't substitute your judgment. You can't, even if it makes common sense, okay? And some of the things he says, a lot of things he says, make common sense, but it ain't the law. Let's go, and I'm gonna switch back to number 1 on the list, which is, I gotta say, the silliest of all the mistakes that are on here, which is the data code, the data table. Okay, that's an easy thing to do. Maybe it's not the best way to do it, but it's what the city council has said is the way that it's to be done, and it's easy to do. There's no financial reason not to do it. It's just sloppy work not to do it, okay? And they didn't. Without that, you can't approve it, all right? It doesn't meet the requirements, and the law is clear. If it doesn't meet the requirements, even on something like that, you can't approve it. You can't substitute in and say, well, we don't think data tables are necessary. Well, I'm sorry. The city council has said that they are. And that's kind of my job here, unfortunately, as I told Sheila before I came, think of me as the asshole from out of town, okay? Because I'm gonna tell you a bunch of things you don't wanna hear, and then I'm gonna go home. But that's the law, and that's what your duty is. That's what each of you took an oath to do, is to follow the law. And the law is very clear. If it does not meet the standards written out here, you must deny. And I'm gonna disagree with the staff. It says you have, 3 options. Either it meets the standards, okay, in which case you must approve it. You can't say, well, we don't like it, but if it meets the standards, you must approve it. Or it doesn't meet the standards, in which case the only thing you can do is deny it, okay? Now, you could, I guess, say, well, we're approving it if they meet all the standards. We're finding that it doesn't meet the standards, but it needs to meet the standards. And it just, I'm not gonna go over each one in detail, but, he doesn't like the walkways. He thinks that that's a pointless thing. Well, maybe it is, but again, it's very clear what the council wanted you to do. You gotta do that, apply it. The cul-de-sacs, they're very clear. Here's what the maximum length is, okay? I don't care what the fire department said. I don't care what Bozo the Clown said. The city council has given you a standard. You're to apply that standard, okay? If it's longer than that standard, it's like, I'm gonna say the opposite of it. Instead of if it doesn't fit, it must quit, you must quit. If it doesn't fit, you must send it back, all right? And honestly, I feel bad for them in the sense that they have wasted, I think, a lot of engineering time pushing this through. They should have pursued it with the staff. That's why we have 3 phases to this process. The first is to work out these silly problems with the staff. And then you come in and really the preliminary plat and the final plat should just be, like they are. He talks about there's a vision. The vision has been set out for you as well. The vision for the city of Kearney is the plan, the comprehensive plan. That's what our forefathers, or maybe not so but our fathers and mothers have said, this is what we want Kearney, how we want Kearney to develop, okay? And you guys should, to the extent of your ability, take that into account. The last thing I want to touch on is just the buffers, okay? If you read it the way that he is, yes, he's right. Doesn't say, that if it has lots adjoining. But it's clearly, you have to read it in context. And so, we, in the law, we apply a couple different concepts. The first thing is you read something. Now, this is an area I will tell you, you all can exercise your judgment. You get to decide what that section means. I would argue that you have to read it in context and read it as a whole. While it's true, it doesn't include that language. It's funny that they would mention that and then not. I think that the term railroad and highway is meant to include also situations of adjoining lots. That was a shorthand that they were using. But, that's your guys' position. That's what you guys do, is you make those interpretations. How should that section be interpreted? Not interpreted, that's not a word. So I'll keep it short and keep it at that. But what you guys need to do is you need to apply the law as it's written. And I will tell you, it may seem like that you're doing them a favor by not doing it, but you're not. Because if you ignore the law as they're asking you to do, then anybody who's got $120 and file a lawsuit can have this all thrown out. Because a judge will look at it, the judge will say, yeah, it doesn't give you any discretion. And the judge will throw it out, and you can look through case law. I've been practicing municipal law for 35 years. I've seen dozens of cases like this. And all the work that they've spent will be wasted, okay? The purpose of you guys is to keep them from wasting their own money. Make them go back and do it right. That's what I'd leave you with.
Can I speak? Sure. Robert Gilquin, Davis, Star Development. I just wanted to point out, I think some new faces here that I don't recognize, but for the most part, a lot of people have been here for a long time. The last page of the staff report shows permits pulled for single family in Kearney. In 23, and all of 23 was 23 permits. So far this year, it's 12. In 17 and 18, it was 125, 128. So I'd ask you to go back and think about how many developers are coming through with new subdivisions for Kearney. Is there a real need for these single-family lots? I think there is. This is a good subdivision. You guys know Calgary. I don't agree with anything this gentleman from Joe Lauber's office just said. But this is a good project. I think it should go forward. We've tried talking to staff many times, and I can't think of another presentation where Calgary went into so much detail on so many points because we just couldn't get over those humps. Anyway, if there's no flexibility at all, I don't think any subdivisions come through Kearney. I think people will go over to Platte County where everybody else is going. They're not going to Kansas City, but they are going to the suburbs. But if it's this difficult to get a good project passed in Kearney, then people aren't going to bring them through. I don't know, I think 23 single-family permits, 12 single-family permits this year is embarrassing. You guys need subdivisions. This is a good subdivision. And I hope that you guys consider the variances and get that.
I have just one more, and then I'm gonna.
Make it quick, please.
I have never been to the city of Kearney where I've been treated with more disrespect than this gentleman just did. So congratulations, welcome to Kearney, as you said. Let's go just real quickly, because I don't think your own legal counsel's giving you the right legal advice, but let's go to 410-055. F, if you would.
Before we do that, show me the basis of your whole argument. Show me where it says they can substitute their judgment. Because I see that it says they can't. Because I think if you and I can agree on that, because that's your whole premise, they can substitute their judgment for what's in the statute.
Sir, with all due respect to you, I don't feel like that was reciprocated tonight, but with all due respect to you, I'm here to adjust the board. If the board has a question of you, then let them ask you that. Can we go to 410.055, please? Thank you. Let's go to F. Let's go all the way up to the top to read the heading because context matters. Preliminary plat subdivision process. That's where we're at right now. A is talking about water. B is talking about how you submit. C is talking about minor plat. D is notification. E is a fee. F is the preliminary plat. Preliminary plat is the main review instrument used by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are you there, sir? Mm-hmm. Very good. The Planning and Zoning Commission must approve the preliminary plat with any notations, variances, and changes before the applicant can proceed to the final plat stage. To accomplish this end, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall have the following authority, options, and powers. And I'll stop there, but there's more to follow. So I'm not sure why your legal counsel is giving you advice that you don't have the ability to use discretion, not discretion, to use variances and changes and notations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, first of all, before we get going, I have a couple of questions. David, how did this get to here with these issues?
We were trying to work with them to make modifications to bring to you, and they asked to be brought to the board today.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman, that's not fully,
Yeah,
that's not
modifications
fully,
for wholesale acceptance of the comments. Right?
I mean, how many response letters have we had back and forth? With all due respect, I'm just gonna sit here from here on out.
All right.
I mean, we've been talking about this for literally 2 years. We've had the application filed in March 8th, whatever that date was. We filed it on the deadline, procedurally correct. We have received responses back and forth and back and forth and we're not getting any further. It's the same comments. So that's why we're here, not because we haven't given it a pretty good attempt.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this is the part I don't understand, okay? Let's just look at the very first thing, the data table, all right? They told you your way of doing it is not acceptable, you gotta do a data table. It's just as easy to do. I understand why you don't like a data table. Why don't you just do it? Why is that an insurmountable obstacle? That I don't get.
Looking over all my notes. All right, I'm sure you have something.
I'll let you guys go. I'll reserve.
Okay, I'll go first. So there was a lot of telling us how to do our jobs tonight and acting like we don't know how to do our jobs. And acting like Kearney's unique in the number of, by the way, occupancies and what everybody's facing right now with inflation and the interest rates on mortgages. And I think people are still going to want to build neighborhoods here. And I think several other people probably on this board were part of the comprehensive plan process and know how important it is to the residents of Kearney. And our job is not actually to approve or disapprove anything, but it's to make a recommendation to our Board of Aldermen, which is what we have here, and not a city council. And they get to approve or disapprove it. I think Nation Road is an extremely busy road. Will that part be less busy than the part south of it? Yeah, but there's a elementary school right there. And part of my job, I feel, and maybe you guys disagree and that's fine, is to think about the future of Kearney. And I could see a future where there's another internet or interstate exchange north of the city because we are growing so rapidly. So I like the care of Nation Road. I think it's a busy road. It needs sidewalks. It needs walkability. I agree that I'm definitely not going to make some ruling on somebody else's land and plat. My general feeling is the requests from the city aren't that big of a deal. Also, maybe you say you're going to make sure all those plots are the size they're supposed to be. So you should go ahead and show me. Also, I'm a data nerd. Look at that graph. So I think show me that the data works to get you all the plots you want. I think the reason you don't want the setback is because you'll have to shrink your lots and maybe not get as many houses on the land, which is less money. That's what it looks like to me. And maybe that's not right, and that's fine, but that's what it looks like. So I feel like the requests from the city, most of them, I agree with okay, I'll give you the nobody wants a sidewalk, or not a sidewalk, but a walkway between houses. That one, but again, it's like, sometimes I'm supposed to be able to use my discretion and common sense, and then other times I'm not supposed to use it. I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to be doing here tonight. But I'm going to go with what I think, which is I get to use my common sense and discretion. And so that one I'm okay with. The other things, I think they're reasonable requests. That's where I come down on this.
Good. She pretty much covered it.
How long have we been doing this? I mean, for me, it seems like since birth. But this is the first time we've ever had anything like this, or at least, what's it been, David, 20 years or something like that I've been here?
Longer than I've been here.
Yeah, longer than you. And we've always been able to work stuff out with Ron, and he's brought stuff in, and, you know, like your walkway thing, you know, that doesn't make sense. Okay. you know, but my gosh, this is like a whole laundry list here of stuff that is out of whack. And we've just never had anything that I can remember, any subdivision like this that has so many different issues that don't fit, supposedly don't fit the code. And that's not what I do every day, is read the book. So, I mean, we have to depend on the staff. And I don't know what you guys' crosswaysness is, you know, but we gotta get it worked out. I understand from the developer's point of view very well. I mean, the cost of these houses is getting too high, and the requirements on the development, it all costs extra money for the developer, and that all goes into the price of the house. So whether the code is right or wrong, I guess it is what it is. I don't like that saying very much, but it is. And so we need to take a look at the code and see if they're wrong or right, and go from there. But there's too many things here that we can't resolve this. I'm finished.
I think I agree with everything that's been said so far. I have a problem with the cul-de-sacs. I mean, a 900-foot cul-de-sac, whether the fire department likes that or is okay with that or not, if something happens in the middle of that 900 feet, nobody's getting out from the end. There's one way in and one way out on this Nova Circle. So that's concerning to me. That to me is a health and safety issue. I don't know if we speak to that in the codes or not. I don't know, but I know that particular street is longer than it needs to be. That's one of my stickler things, I think, is that for health, for life safety, we need to not make so many exceptions to the rule. You know, it's just, you can get an ambulance in there, you can get a fire truck in there, you can get them turned around, but if the fire truck stops in the middle of the street because there's a fire, everybody that lives on the other side of that's gonna be stuck. So.
Got a couple questions for the applicant there. You're asking for a lot of modifications from us. I don't hear you giving anything in return. You're asking us to essentially go against our legal counsel. And I got to defer to legal counsel. He went to law school, so I'm going to take his opinion. And no offense above yours or mine or anybody on this board. So I'm gonna, you know, his job is to protect us. So you're asking us to bend the rules or grant modifications or waivers to the established set of guidelines or established ordinances, not guidelines, they're ordinances, that's a law. What are you giving us in return? We've asked for some additional right-of-way for future growth. We've asked for some pedestrian connectivity, and you just haven't worked with that. I have an issue with that. I will agree, this is a good project. This is just bad design, right? Cul-de-sacs, there's a lot of cul-de-sacs in here. They are very long. Beyond just the public safety issue with cul-de-sacs, there are maintenance issue as well. If anybody lives on a cul-de-sac, you know that's one of the last things to get cleared when it snows. Then that goes to, again, public safety. If something happens to your house, the snow's not cleared, how do you get out? It costs extra money for this city to maintain those cul-de-sacs, extra money to plow those. So I have some issues with that. The preliminary plat sets the standard for the final plat, correct, David? So what we approve on the preliminary plat, as you stated, is what gets approved on the final plat. So what we decide today, if we were to approve it, the preliminary plat would be approved today, and then the final plat would come back in. Correct me if I'm wrong, the final action for a preliminary plat lies with this body.
True.
It does not go to the Board of Aldermen. So what we approve today is what the Board of Aldermen are bound to, correct?
Correct.
So if we don't follow the ordinances that they have established, their hands are tied, correct?
Can I ask for a point of order? How did you say that process went?
I'm talking right now, so we can get one on the
Okay,
table. Thank you.
We'll come back to that. Weird.
Just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean we need to continue it in the future, right? If we didn't do it correctly in the past, does not mean we need to keep doing it incorrectly in the future. I have concerns with the residents that bought into the first phases of the project with the impression that the original approved preliminary plat is how the development would develop out. So did you hold any kind of neighborhood meeting, have any conversations with the existing residents?
Can I talk to you now?
I'm good, actually. That was enough. Again, the road for future expansion of the Nation Road, that's just good planning principles, right? We know it's gonna grow. At some point, that area out there will develop it, whether it's in the city or it's in the county, it will develop, whether that's 10 years, 20 years, at some point. So establishing or working with the developer and getting some additional right-of-way to accommodate that future growth just makes good planning principles. If we don't get that right-of-way now, what does it take to get right-of-way when it's under private ownership? I mean, it's condemnation, right? Doesn't seem like the best path forward. I think I'll just hold my further comments. So I think I'm good.
All right. Further comments? All right.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir, please be brief.
I certainly do not want to be contentious with anybody. But I wasn't following your train of thought, and it's important, if we're going to learn, we've got to understand that. Whenever I can't hear you, I was sitting behind the podium, right? You couldn't see me, I couldn't see you. Could you clarify what the procedural question was that you were asking about?
Preliminary plats, the Board of Planning and Zoning here have final action on preliminary plats.
That is correct.
Meaning and that sets the standard for the final plat. So if we approve something today that does not meet the UDO or the codes,
You're right.
council can't come back when the final plat comes in and say, we're not gonna approve this. There's case law. So we need to make sure that we are following the guidance that are set out in the ordinance.
So can you tell me which ones, because buffer strips to me do not apply. Do they? Do they not?
But
I mean, to know that, to be able to do a development, to be able to come back and be productive, we've got to understand where you're at on that.
So
Because you are the end all be all.
yeah, you're asking for longer streets than's allowed, longer cul-de-sacs than is allowed. You're asking to do away with pedestrian connectivity on those longer streets. The buffer strip, that's the buffer strip, that is, a give and take, right? You want us to do something, but you're not willing to give anything.
I don't know that that's true. It boiled down to these items, but, so there again, to be able to move forward, if we table this, I don't know what I'm coming back with, because I've got nothing other than we're trying to bamboozle the city. We've been in town, as Mr. Porter pointed out, we've been in town a long time. And we're still here because we don't bamboozle the city. We try to work with the city, but when you say, because we just approved stallings, now, many of you weren't on this board, but last year, we approved stallings with many of the same items that we're asking for here. And it was okay. But then whenever we did it like that, then it became, no, that's not what our code, that's not how we read our code. Not necessarily how the code, what the code says, it's how the code's being applied.
Can I ask a follow-up question there? On the data table, can you tell me the lot dimensions of lot 100?
I can tell you that they'll meet your zoning
Can
code.
you tell me the lot dimensions of lot 200?
Tell me what you want. What's the data table contain?
I want to know what I'm approving today.
You're approving a 75 by, minimum 75 by 110-foot lot with 8,250 square feet.
That's not,
Hand on the Bible.
so why
That's not
can't,
how we approve things.
Yeah.
Your way, literally,
why
how
can't-
do
why
you
can't we
know that
label
that's the
the
number of
plat? So I've
plots
looked
if
at a
you
couple
haven't done
plats.
the calculation?
in my, I've looked at a couple plats. If this were to come before me in a professional setting, it wouldn't even make it this far, right? Like the lawyer said, that seems like a very basic thing to do.
Tell me what you want.
I want you to follow the ordinance.
Tell me what that
Give me
means.
the lot dimensions as the ordinance requires.
So lot dimensions on every one of those
Every
lots.
single one of them. What am
What
I,
else?
what am I approving? I don't know what I'm approving here. I see a bunch of,
I need to show you guys what you have, your last preliminary plat you approved
Okay.
looked like.
just because we did it incorrectly in the past, does not mean we get to keep doing it incorrectly.
Okay.
Just because I got away with running a stop sign doesn't mean I can continue to get away with running a stop sign.
That's fair.
Okay.
Lot data table, square footage of every lot, 350 some odd of them, correct? And we're talking about in tabular form. You want to, because it says a table, so that makes me think that it's tabular. So then how do I,
It makes more sense to blow up the plan and label each lot with the dimensions and the coordinates and that, but.
but there again, that's not what it
If you
says.
want to go with the letter of the law, let's do
Okay,
that, but
okay, so buffer strips then. Do you read the punctuation the same way I read it?
There's some subjectivity to that, in my opinion, and I agree with him. The people that built on the ones south of there with the anticipation that their next door neighbor that's getting ready to build would have the exact same setback, if you will. It's kind of common sense that would be a carry-on on Nation Road North, because it's going that way for the first mile, and then obviously it stops then for the next mile. That's my opinion on that.
I agree, and I really think that we have to plan for Nation Road to expand, and if we don't provide that extra buffer, then we're gonna have to take more, there won't be room for that. And we see that in places where people's houses all of a sudden become way up against the road, and part of our job is to make sure the future looks good.
So would it be fair to say whether I give a buffer strip or if I give lot dimensions, because you alluded to the fact that we were trying to bamboozle the city, and that's not what this buffer deal's about. It's not required, but if the lot depth was comparable, maybe it doesn't get all the way to your 50 feet, that there again, I don't think is required. See, because right-of-way and buffer all play together, right? If I give more right-of-way, then I've got to give less buffer without losing lots, to your point. I mean, we
Right,
could wipe
I
this slate
never
clean.
once said you were trying to bamboozle us. I said you were trying to get as many lots on there as possible.
Sure.
That you aren't being secretive about that, and I understand the
Right.
driver for it. It's expensive to build these properties. I get it. It's expensive to try to buy one of these properties. I mean, I get it, but my job is not to worry about that above the needs of the community. And so if that means you have to put a few less plots on your land, that's a sacrifice that I think
has to be worth being made for the community as a whole. But I never, ever said you were trying to bamboozle us. I don't think anybody here has tried to lie to us tonight.
Okay, so what? So we will request to table the project, but I think it'd be really nice to have a session so that we can get in your all's heads.
Hold on. A work session with the body? That's just a full-on meeting with
It's the same as a meeting.
open records requests or sunshine law and notices, so.
But you could table it and come back and have a more in-depth discussion. I would hope there'd be some work done between now and then.
Absolutely. I just don't, I mean, other than the data table, label everything to preliminary, I mean, final plat standards is that's what happens on a final plat if it is all those dimensions happen on the final plat, but we'll consider doing it on the preliminary plat. It's not as insignificant as the people that have never done it before think it is. We would request that you table this project. Is there a project number on this?
We just call it Westwood North.
Westwood North, item A, to the next available planning and zoning meeting.
July meeting. In July.
With the anticipation that there could be some collaborative effort.
We could go through an exercise and make modifications to the code, but that would require more time than just a month. That for an ordinance change that would go before the board and then also the Board of Aldermen, or commission and then the Board of Aldermen. So there's time in that exercise.
Before we table this, can I ask one more question, Ron? And I don't know if this is preliminary plat or final plat, so I'm just gonna ask the question. When I'm looking at the site plan, there are a couple of ponds. Is your plan to fill those ponds in and then create new detention?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's two large detention tracks that set on the property. One, both will be wet bottom ponds we're anticipating.
Are they detention or retention?
Retention.
Because they're labeled detention.
They're retention.
Okay.
They are
The
wet
study says
bottom.
retention, there's a
stormwater
label that says
management
detention,
facilities.
but
Okay.
it's retention.
One, that kind of brings up another question. You alluded to, you wanted us to do an off-site stipulation, which I'm glad the attorney stopped that because that's off-site, right? But you said a lot of water drains from your site through that site.
A lot of it does now, yeah.
So with the increased impervious that you are going to put out here with the streets, the rooftops, driveways, sidewalks, where's that water going to go that's currently going through there now? How's that being addressed?
It will go through those pipes. It was sized adequately for the area that drains to it.
So what was if you're gonna redirect the water, what was the purpose of the stipulation then?
Any good engineering company, any good engineering staff, any good engineer or planner will always plan for that doomsday scenario where a beach ball went down in the pipe. A kid's blow-up pool plugged the outlet or the inlet of the storm catchment basin. That's why we worry about where the water goes.
Well, I know why we worry about it. I guess my confusion is if you're
I
gonna,
think he was just trying to flag it for you guys. That
It's a courtesy, quite frankly. I
Doesn't
mean,
make a lot of
Mr.
sense to build a
McGuire,
house on that lot.
I'm just
you're
curious.
gonna have Mr. Lauber's law firm queued up when the water floods those people out. I was trying to, there again,
I understand.
be courteous, but that seems to be a bygone era.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can
Okay,
I make a statement, please?
yes,
I'll do it quickly. My name's Kit McElroy, and I live across 162nd Street. And all of the water goes into our 1 acre pond. And including in that pond is all the trash. The trash from Nation Road all ends up in our pond. And my wife Susan spends hours going around picking up bottles and things like that. So I was good to hear that those are not detention ponds and they're retention ponds, because part of retention ponds is also to catch trash in the area where it is catching the water from. But it's still my understanding at some point in time, all that water's, unless it all evaporates, is going right into our 1 acre pond. So just keep that in mind, and please keep asking the questions, because, you know, we shouldn't have to go pull trash out of our ponds. So,
thank you, sir. All right. Okay, so how do we do the table?
I'll make a motion.
Just a motion? All right.
Could be seconded.
All right.
so
Four.
I'm almost of the opinion, I'm kind of torn on this one, right? Like, I'm almost of the opinion of recommending denial. But I will defer to my fellow commissioners on that, if they want to recommend that, that continuance, to give them some more time to work with staff. I'm happy with that as well.
Yeah, I
I'll
think,
do it. I move table the project to the next meeting.
I second that.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, that motion has been tabled, David.
So all was in favor of the table?
Yes.
That's July 8th.
I may still be here. All right. I'm supposed to go to Texas that. All right, let's move on to item B. Does anybody need to take a break?
Good.
We're good? All right. I may have to take a break here in a minute. All right, next item, item B, 213 East Washington Street, rezoning from R2 to RP2 with the concept plan.
Yeah, let me
David.
get back up here to the agenda here.
Okay.
Oops.
Did you drive by this? Yeah. You drive by it, yeah?
I haven't, not recently.
They've done a lot of dirt work right here, looks great.
Actually, I might go down to the drawing on this one also. Go to the aerial map or location map. So actually, I'd like to give comments on the next two items together because they're related. We've done that in the past and it seemed to work okay for you guys. So we've got, the next two applications are a rezoning from R2 to RP2 with concept plan for 213 East Washington Street. I give it the address number. And then Groom's Addition replat, final plat to split that property. So Larry and Karen Hampton. Larry's in the audience today, represented also by Dustin and Lori Hampton. Dustin is Larry's son, if you don't know who Dustin is. They propose to rezone 0.52 acres at 213 East Washington Street from R2, two-family residential district, to RP2, two-family residential plan district with concept plan, and also to subdivide the property into two single-family residential lots. The proposed rezoning to plan district with concept plan would allow subdivision of the property into two different lots. The Lot 8B would meet zoning requirements for lot size, so Lot 8B would be directly at the corner and include the existing house that's on the property. The house was actually built in 1872, if you could believe that. Saw that from the Clay County report the other day. Lot 9B would wrap around it, so it would start on Washington Street frontage along the west property line, and then along the south, connecting to Prospect Street. The reason for that would be a driveway connection from Prospect Street, so we get either a rear entry or side entry and not have a garage facing Washington Street. The house would fit into the neighborhood a little bit better based on the age of a lot of the houses there. There are a few houses there with some driveways off the front, but in general, in the downtown area, we have side entries. As part of the packet, you'll see a 1963 sewer map, and I labeled in red so that you could tell it wasn't really part of the original map. They identified different houses and the sewer line down Washington Street with the sewer connections. And you can clearly see that there used to, at one time, be an extra house there in between 213 and 209. I could not identify when that house might have been demolished, couldn't find a permit in our files. I'm sorry?
It burned down.
I didn't know what year something might have happened, but.
It was probably in the 80s.
Okay.
I can comment to that.
Okay.
Because I've been in this town forever. I'm living in Hampton, City. There was a house built there. A farmer used to work for Bob Payne Senior in the 70s, and it burned down in the late 70s. There was a guy named Monty Thompson lived in the house that we bought, and he bought that lot.
I don't remember that house being
And
there.
there's, I'm sure there's stuff that's been in manhole, because the old meter is still there. The old meter's in front of that old property. And you're looking at that driveway, when I was a kid, a child, or teenager, that was a common one driveway.
Yeah,
Property did live right on that driveway, in back then. And it's always been that way ever since,
who
so.
lived in that house that burned down? Do you know?
A little old lady about my age.
I don't remember
I'm
that.
sorry, but I would have been about 15, 16, 17 at the time.
Yeah.
And I can remember, I've been under that house, and she was a single lady,
Yeah.
little house, small house, no garage, one driveway, and it burned.
Where was the bird house?
So Monty bought that extra lot, but how did the two get merged? He must have merged the lots.
The deeds read by tracks. So there's an old 19-something hundred plat.
Okay.
And the tracks don't, I think the county might have merged them together somehow. It's like,
Jackson County does this, where they'll merge for tax purposes. The underlying plat's still valid. So it wasn't replatted. The underlying plat may still be valid.
well, the final
This will take
plat
care.
here would
Yeah.
readjust those lines, and be a little easier for us to track down and figure that out. But anyway, the reason for the P overlay district allows some flexibility in some of your lot dimensions is because in a north-south direction, keeping the original house there on that property, the lot to the west would be narrower than 75 feet wide. It would be 60 feet wide. And that is the property line where we could maintain the side yard setback, a standard side yard setback for the existing house. So the proposed lot where the existing house is would meet all size requirements. The additional lot where the new house would be built meets size requirements, but not the width requirement from Washington Street. So that's the request today for the P overlay. Also, as part of that P overlay, they submitted a house elevation showing the proposed house. So when we would receive a building permit, if these cases or these items were approved, then that's kind of the house we would look to see on a plot plan and building plans for a future building permit. Also, as part of the project, they will relocate the existing driveway that serves 213 because it would be in front of the new lot. They'll relocate that to Prospect Street. We do require 4 off-street parking spaces for single family, so they'd have to size the driveway appropriately. They're not proposing a new garage, but we want to make sure that they can provide the off-street parking. Public notice has been posted in the Kearney Courier, and notification letters were sent to property owners within 185 feet. Final plat application to subdivide the property was also submitted, matches the concept plan. In fact, the final plat drawing showed the house that would be removed from the final plat, because the final plats only show property lines and easements and right-of-ways. I wanted to keep that in there for the concept plan and to show how that existing house fits on the properties. Final plat drawings consistent with that concept plan. Like I said, the city water and sewer are available to the site. We have water and sewer on both streets. Staff recommends approval of the request to rezone 0.52 acres from R2 to RP2 to Family Residential Plan District with the concept plan for the following conditions. One, that the proposed concept plan is approved for the following. Lot 9B for 211 East Washington Street is approved at 60 feet wide along the Washington Street frontage. The proposed front elevation for Lot 9B is approved as submitted. The driveway access for Lot 9B, which would be the new proposed house, would be restricted to Prospect Street. And the driveway relocation for 213 East Washington Street accommodate 4 off-street parking spaces, and then develop the project in compliance with the city codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees and taxes. Sample motion for the rezoning would be, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the Board of Aldermen approve the request for rezoning to RP2 with concept plan with conditions recommended by staff. I didn't include the sample motion in the packet, so I made copies and it was not. Sorry, I didn't get that transferred over on this staff report. And then regarding the final plat, staff recommends approval of the final plat with the following conditions. Approval of the request to rezone to RP2, two-family residential plan district with concept plan is approved. 2, submit a revised final plat if necessary. And 3, develop the site in compliance with all city codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees and taxes. Sample motion for final plat would be, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the Board of Aldermen approve the Grooms Addition replat of lots 8 and 9, Block D, final plat with the conditions recommended by staff. There's rezoning. Tonight does require a public hearing to be open and heard, and then both applications will be scheduled for Board of Aldermen for final approval.
All right, at this point, we'll open it up for the public. Larry, do you have anything you want to add to this? Or Dustin?
Well, I know it's just, I'm Dustin Hampton. I live at 1815 Kathleen Way currently. I don't know if any of you drove up here to the top of the hill where it's at. We have already done an extensive amount of work to the site. We have addressed a lot of drainage issues that have been lingering for that neighbor. Well, that property in particular was a swamp. It was a huge mosquito pit. It was bad. The city, there is a drainage tube that runs under the street and it dead ended at the sidewalk.
Oh, wow.
At some point, sometime, we don't know when, there was a tube place that runs that'd be west, and it dead ends about lot 4 and creates a mud pit in his backyard. I spoke with several people from the city and everybody says, it's not our pipe, don't know what you're gonna do. So we have rechanneled the water to where gravity is going to take it down, but we can control the flow of the water down the way that it's supposed to go without flooding the whole property. So we've already made a lot of improvements to that property. I trimmed all the trees and got them under control to help protect the public utilities, because there was one tree grown completely through all that. But truthfully, my wife and I have a vision. We would love to fill out some of these older lots downtown. And I love the area, it's quiet. And we actually plan to occupy this home when we build it. The concept plan we have given you is what we have stole off the internet. I've been in talks with Dennis Tuck. That is what we want the front of the house to look like. He will draw our permanent plan that will go on there. So we've been in talks with him. I just waiting on him. I gotta pay him $3,000 to draw a plan until I get this approved. So thank you for your time. I can answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Is that back I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, be sure to open for public hearing.
He did.
We just did.
Oh, okay.
We'll close the
Sorry.
hearing,
I was
close the
thinking
public
it was
hearing.
just applicant.
That back part, is that previous alleyway at all?
I don't-
You don't think so?
Not aware of it.
Okay. Well, we don't have to vacate that or
This
not.
yard area.
Trust me, I tried. I wanted it to be.
I have to say, I think that when you have, when you want to have a vibrant downtown, you need to have people living in those areas, and infilling some of these empty lots is really, really important. I love the looks of what you're planning because it feels like it fits the neighborhood. So I think I love the idea. Somebody may tell me I shouldn't, but I love the idea.
The driveway that's there now, is that kind of right in the middle? Both ones?
Our setbacks be minimum on the existing home, so pretty much that whole driveway will be the side yard to our home, so that will get torn out. And
Yeah.
that'll become grassway or
Gotcha.
swing set or whatever, yard.
So I just want to thank the applicant for bringing this forward. I love infill, right?
Yeah.
As we heard in the previous application, development's expensive. And nothing is more conducive to bringing that home cost down when you build one where the infrastructure is already in place. Makes a lot of sense to build in place. This project's a little bit different than the last one. You are asking to reduce that street frontage from 75 to 60, but that's through a different process. That's through a rezoning process into a planned zoning district, which allows us to do that. And so I'm all for this. You've taken great efforts to match the character of the neighborhood. It will drive people's property values up. It'll bring new revitalization to the neighborhood, and I would love to see more of this. So definitely want to encourage this throughout the entire community, not just here, but anywhere where we got some infill opportunities. So don't really have any questions for you.
I'd say I agree with all that, and it's conducive with the 20-year plan that we actually do care about, what the community wants, and they want to see these kind of things in downtown. So.
My only comment is that you didn't quite go far enough on that tree in the northeast.
What, you call the one that was growing through the power lines?
I mean, there's no limbs left on it
Did you
anyway,
pay
so.
attention to the
It
amount?
will in 2 years.
8 hours with a wood chipper, an 89-horse wood chipper to get rid of all those. It's been a process, but.
Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is
The
the
reason.
rezoning from R to RP2. Would entertain a motion.
So I would make a recommendation of approval for the rezoning from
R2
R2 to RP2
with concept plan.
with concept plan as outlined in the staff letter. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that one carries as well. Anything to add for the next item, David?
Final plat,
No?
item no. Would appreciate a motion and second for that.
I agree.
I can do that one too, since I got it right there.
Have at it.
I'd move to recommend approval of Grimm's Addition replat lots 8 and 9, Block D, final plat with the conditions as outlined in the staff letter.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That one also carries. Next, David, is Kearney School District, Hawthorne Elementary School addition site plan.
Yeah, we've got 2 more considerations tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, you're free, you're free.
Thank you, guys.
By the way, fun fact, that's the third house built in Kearney.
Really?
Sorry, I thought I'd get to a little bit better page. All right, right, so, next item is Kearney School District Site Plan for Kearney Elementary.
Hawthorne.
And I think I drew Hawthorne on here.
I think Hawthorne's first.
Well, Hawthorne is first and then
Yes.
it's Kearney Elementary, right?
Well, on my agenda, I say Kearney Elementary, but I think I put it in the packet backwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and scroll down to Kearney Elementary. And I wanna get to a site plan sheet. That'll be good enough. Thank you for bearing with me being patient. Okay, Kearney School District proposes to construct a 14,826 square foot addition at Kearney Elementary. The improvements would include a 2-story addition on the back side of the building towards the northeast corner or northwest corner for additional classroom space, and then a small building addition and a remodel at the front of the school for administrative offices and a media center. As part of the improvements, they'll have to redo some of the pavement out front and in the back where the parking is to accommodate those new changes. Site plan review is required for additions over 5,000 square feet or over 50%. The smaller of either of those, this addition is over 14,000 square feet, requires site plan approval. The engineer submitted a request for waiver of detention, which was approved by our city engineer. The reason for that is the increase in impervious surface was 1,000 square feet, and over the size of the project, it was minor and did not necessitate detention. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the following conditions. They submit revised drawings prior to the Board of Aldermen meeting if necessary. Staff didn't have any comments on changes. Submit a building permit application prior to construction, and then develop the project in compliance with all codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees. Sample motion language would be, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the Board of Aldermen approve the Kearney Elementary School addition site plan with conditions recommended by staff. This application before the Board of Aldermen, and they do have a representative online, Braden Taylor with MKEC Engineering is engineer on the job and help prepare the plans for this project.
Okay.
We got some building elevations in the packet as well. If you wanted to look at that, I can bring them up on the screen too. A little small, so it's hard to tell, but
So
it's pretty consistent. Yeah, it's consistent with.
if I got this right, they're adding on to the back end of the
Right.
gym?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Then you're putting a little bit on the front too.
A little bit.
Just not changing a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
The drive's gonna
Yeah, the
move.
driveway out front, they're only repaving it just for elevation reasons, not to move it out away from the building.
I got nothing. Pretty cut and dry and easy.
Anybody have any questions for the engineer while he's online?
Most of us won't even see much of what's getting done. On the back.
What the big pile of rocks in the middle of the football field is.
It is a pile of rocks.
Okay.
All right.
Why is it?
Fireworks.
That's not what he asked.
I feel like I should not inquire any further.
Why?
Words. What's the pile of rocks?
Kids.
Pile of rocks.
Yeah, I thought they were kids.
I think that's a pile of people.
It might be kids.
Okay.
All right, now that we've,
Yeah.
Now that we've,
does anybody have any comments?
All right, okay, motion on this item.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends the Board of Aldermen approve the Kearney Elementary School addition site plan with conditions recommended by staff.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. David, the next one is Hawthorne.
Thank you. Yeah, next one is Hawthorne.
I apologize for coming back in, but I noticed my daughter-in-law made the comment about the third house, and your blank look on your face, her statement was that record showed that house up there was the third house ever built in Kearney.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I
exciting.
didn't get what she meant, and it's like, you guys looked at her like you, and I did too. So I apologize. That bugged me, and I thought, what did she mean by that?
That's pretty
There's more
cool.
houses been built in Kearney than three. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
I picked up on it.
We figured
Good
it out.
comment.
Yeah.
Now I want to know where the other two are that are older than it.
Gone.
Okay, next item, Kearney School District Site Plan for Hawthorne Elementary Building Addition. Notice it's kind of ironic that we have the school stuff happening right at the summer, and they do like to try and do all the work when the kids aren't in the buildings for some reason. So Kearney School District proposes to construct a 6,222 square foot addition on the north side of Hawthorne Elementary School for additional classroom space. Proposed improvements also include sidewalk modifications and circle drive modifications to accommodate the addition. When they do the circle drive, I think there's a ramp actually today along the west side of the building. The sidewalk goes to the north and it hits the south side of the circle drive in a ramp, and you basically go nowhere. The ramp will be relocated over to the east side. It will be across the parking lot for new ADA space, which they don't have, so it's a great idea for them to add an ADA space out there as well. They've also proposed a new monument sign. There's an exhibit in the packet. The old monument sign has the removable letters. They're proposing an electronic reader board type of sign. We have one of those up at the high school, and they get a little popular, and then they can just use an app or whatever, and they can make modifications on the fly for that. We do have some requirements that they use static imagery and not change the image more frequently than every 2 seconds, just so they try not to become a traffic distraction for people on Jefferson Street. Site plan is required because the addition's a little bit over 5,000 square feet. Again, on this site, there was a request for a waiver of detention. They actually are reducing the amount of impervious surface, if you can believe that's not by much, but just a little bit, and so that waiver was also approved by our city engineer. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the following conditions: that they submit revised drawings prior to the Board of Aldermen meeting if necessary, submit a building permit application prior to construction, submit a sign permit prior to construction of the sign, and then develop the project in compliance with all codes, conditions, requirements, plans, and payment of fees that are necessary. We do waive fees, certain fees for building permits for the school district. Sample motion language would be: I move that the Planning Zoning Commission recommend the Board of Aldermen approve the Hawthorne Elementary School addition site plan with conditions recommended by staff. This application will go to the Board of Aldermen for final approval. And Braden Taylor with MKCE Engineering is online if anyone has questions for the applicant.
I have two non-serious comments about this. You're putting that building right in the middle of our old football field at recess, so, and it also is where we landed the helicopter when we came home from our wedding reception. So you can't do that, either one of those things. This is a travesty.
Noted.
Took that under advisement.
And Kearney moves on.
I did not go to school in high school in Kearney, but I did come here for a cross-country meet, and it started and ended at Hawthorne. I remember running past the softball fields and kind of up the hill in the back and back up to the finish.
Well, that
been a little
piece of
while.
ground, I think they paved it now too. That's where we would always, this time of year, everybody'd pick up sides and it was football when it wasn't touch. We were 5th and 6th graders or whatever,
Big pile of rocks, and the other school's gonna keep.
Well, that's our little football field too, so I don't know
So
how.
I zoomed in on those kids. Those are people.
I don't know how that got in.
Anybody have
Must have just
anything
been just the right time.
Right.
for the engineer?
I got nothing.
Anything for the engineer?
I do have one question for David, though. Does the sign code have any restrictions with regards to the brightness of the lights? 'Cause some of those
It does have an auto dimmer for the sunshine.
So they can get
That's as
bright.
far, it's as far as I can tell you. We don't have a specific, like a lumen deal, but there is a dimmer when it gets cloudy out there. I'm sorry. Yeah, when it gets cloudy, it's gotta dim down.
Didn't the one at the high school, didn't we,
Yeah, the high school's the same way.
Yeah.
didn't we make that one shut off at a certain time of night, so it didn't like
Yes.
go all night?
Yeah, because it's really close to residences, I think.
Right,
Yeah, this
which we
one
can
would be
talk about.
too.
yeah, that's later.
They're not as cool.
Will we talk about it again when will they bring a sign thing to us? Or
Not a
do-
sign permit, no.
It says-
Permanent here.
Yeah.
It'd be approved here, then they could move forward with just a permit, staff review permit.
You're more limited in regulating schools,
Yeah,
especially on something like a sign.
Right.
it's kind of like trying to tell your dad what to do.
Okay.
Or your brother, really, because it's another governmental agency.
Yeah.
But again,
Brother said that.
Disagreeable, brother.
Yeah.
comment?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
With staff
With
comments, right?
staff comments.
Yeah, let's roll, let's get it rolling here. It's 8:30.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, I do have one alibi from the original subdivision out here that we voted on. I don't think I said all those opposed.
You did.
Were there any opposed? Okay. I can't remember if I did or not, just wanted to get that on
You
there.
did, because I was listening to see if Mr.
See if you were doing your
job. But he voted yes.
I said I would, everybody else did.
I thought that's why he asked
On
me.
that water
I
retention, I saw
couldn't
that
recall.
too. It looked like they were running the water right over into the one that was already there. And, but Ron and I have gone round and round on
There- I
water
had
before.
a lot more comments on that one, but I think we beat that horse enough.
Yeah. All right. Motion to
I motion to adjourn.
second.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
So,
Who did the motion?